All right, basically my last segment for 2013.
Wow.
That's it. After this, it's all she wrote. I'm done. I can do no more. I've done as good as I can do.
You feeling we're going to finish strong here? It's hard for me to follow Mike Alden, but I'll do the best I can.
I have a bone to pick with you, my friend.
Oh, boy.
We'll get to that in a second. Scott Sherman, our guest. Scott Sherman hosts the 9 to midnight show, weeknights here on the Big 550 KTRS. In the new year, you might be moving to Thursdays because our board meeting might be moving to Fridays.
Well, whatever. I work at your...
You work at the pleasure of the show?
That's right.
All right. So here's my bone of contention. So you come on the show. You're our legal expert. You come on. You give us great, weird, interesting law stories all year long.
Yep.
Stuff we know about, stuff that we don't know about, stuff that we will soon be hearing about, whether it's constitutional decisions or strange, quirky turns and twists in the law. And so that's why we like you, is you bring this interesting mix to the airwaves. So I say to you, we chat from time to time, what do you want to talk about, what's coming up on the show? And you said to me recently, what do you want to talk about? And I said, what I find really interesting is this table saw lawsuit.
Yeah.
And you said, like, yeah, that's stupid.
No, I didn't say it was stupid.
You said, yeah, I don't want to talk about that.
I said it was boring.
How was that boring?
It's not, because we don't know all the details of this.
Well, that's never stopped us before.
Do you want to talk about the table saw lawsuit?
I want to talk about the fact that I got a new table saw, and I'm excited about it.
Is it dangerous, potentially? That's exciting.
Not anymore. You don't find it fascinating that there's a lawsuit working its way through the courts that a guy bought a table saw, a Ryobi table saw, for $100, and he cut his fingers off. And he sued Ryobi because Ryobi did not put this technology into their table saw, which they could have. And the court said, yes, you're right. They should have put this safety feature in their saw, and he won like $5 million.
It's getting more interesting.
Okay. Then, so now the guy who invents this technology that stops the saw from cutting your finger off was going to license this technology to all the table saw companies. He was asking for the moon and the stars. I've got something that is going to guarantee safety. He was, basically selling the seat belt to the car companies.
You're almost talking about Preston Tucker, is what you're talking about. The guy that wanted to put seat belts and airbags into
the cars in the 50s.
Back in the 50s,
right.
And they destroyed him.
Right. So he wanted the moon and the stars for this technology. They said no, because if we put this technology in our table saws, we're basically admitting that our table saws are not safe. And so we have to pay such an exorbitant price, we're not going to do it. So therefore, they're not going to buy his technology. So they're going to keep on selling these saws in which cut people's fingers off. And he says, the heck with everybody. I'm not going to license it to anybody. I'm just going to make my own table saw.
This is the American way.
So the guy now is building his own table saws, and they're being sold for, I tried every angle in the book to get a deal on the table saw. And they said to me, this table saw doesn't need any advertising. It doesn't need any promotional. We can't make these saws fast enough. It's the kind you want is $2,500, whether you buy it in New York City or in Hawaii or in Alaska or in St. Louis. Doesn't matter. It's $2,500. Take it or leave it.
Well, I think what you've got is the perfect storm of sort of business and law. You've got patent law. Somebody owns something that works the better mousetrap.
Right.
And then it's up to him to decide how and who and where and why he wants to produce that.
Right.
And if he wants to build it himself and there's a market for it, that's fine. But at $2,500 price point, I don't know, because I'm not in the woodworking field, at what point is it worth the risk that maybe your hand might not come off?
Great question.
How much is it worth to you?
Great question, because now when you walk into the store, this is just anecdotal.
Yep.
I walked into every store that sells this saw. I went to Woodcraft and I purchased it yesterday. It's my Christmas gift to myself. And there are other saws out there that do the same, cut the same relatively same, it's relatively same quality. One's maybe a little bigger, a little smaller, or whatever else, but basically the same. They're asking $1,100, $900, $1,000 for the same type of saw, but it doesn't have the technology. Those aren't selling. You can't give those away, but you can't find the $2,500 saw because too many people are buying the saw stop.
Because the name brand?
Because of the technology. Well, two things. They say it's a really good saw.
Yeah.
And you don't cut your finger off. So
look, I'm very sensitive to this because one of my dearest and closest friends, one of his family friends you call an uncle,
right,
is a woodworking guy, and he's from Long Island. There must be something in the water out in the sound out there.
It's called toxic sewage.
And he, like you, loves the woodworking stuff and had a terrible injury with a saw.
Right.
And so there's sort of a balance here between what's feasible and...
Should the federal government force this guy to sell his technology to these other table saw companies?
No, because this is what the patent ownership of intellectual property is all about.
Even though all these people are cutting their fingers off with table saws,
yep,
the federal government should not step in and say, look, you have the option. You can buy the saw for $2,500.
No more than they should make Mark Zuckerberg give us free Facebook stock.
Right.
When you own an intellectual property, a copyright, a patent, or a trademark, it's yours to do with what you want, and you can keep everyone, including but not limited to the government, away from it. I don't know why this guy won't sell it cheaper. Maybe the pressure should be put on him. Hey, you're letting people potentially get killed because you're trying to be greedy and hold it hostage for more money. It seems like some other company, there's the names. There are 100 other companies that would line up to pay more than Ryobi would be willing to pay to make a saw that the average person could afford.
What is
it's his fault.
What is fascinating about this is this guy created this technology, and there's no, it's a saw, and all these other companies can't come up with a different way to stop the saw instantaneously.
Yeah, it seems like reverse engineering has been the way that Bill Gates and other people got around copyright violation.
Right.
You take the saw, you give it to 15 different engineers, and you go, okay, don't do it like this, but can we make it stop? There should be a Manhattan Project for saws.
And they can't come up with one.
And why they can't come up with it. What we should do is let this guy, first of all, we should tell him, okay, first of all, you can sell this cheaper. But what we want you to do is fix the Obamacare website first.
Everybody.
Then when you do that, we'll buy your saw for $1,200. Let the government buy the saw for $1,200, and then let them have a saw buyback program.
Everybody who's seen the video of the hot dog because the video
shuts off?
It shuts off. The one guy puts his finger up and says, "Look at this," and tests it and puts his finger up. And it stops on a dime. I mean, it stops. But they usually
with that hand.
They usually use a hot dog.
The other hand's like
they use a hot dog on top of a piece of wood, and they cut the piece of wood all the way up to the hot dog, and then it stops, and the blade disappears. Everyone I've shown that video to is amazed by it. And what's amazing to me is
hot dog and pizza. You better be careful. They're going to take your Duck Dynasty show away from you.
What's amazing is you're right. The iPhone comes out.
Yes.
Samsung, LG, everybody else buys it and then figures out a way to copy it without actually copying it. But you can't copy. For some reason, this guy is so far ahead technologically that no one else can come up with any other way to do it other than his way.
And this is a perfect lesson in intellectual property law in that no matter how valuable and how sort of, meritorious this is, when you own it, you have the exclusive right to keep everybody away from it.
I just find it so fascinating.
Maybe you could have him on the show and we could convince him to license it to you.
No.
No.
Well, I barely know how to cut the wood.
You don't even have to make it.
Well, there you go. 750. Who's your sponsor, Scott Sherman?
St. Louis Home Retention Group. You know, the government has these programs which are there to help the homeowners. And when you're talking about Christmas and putting presents under the tree, there's no more important time of year than right now to be safe and secure in your home. HARP, HAMP, you know all those acronyms. But I can tell you, folks, the interest rates are going to be going up starting the first of the year because the Fed and the federal government are ending some subsidies. This is the time, if you're behind or if your house is underwater, to get a modification. Don't wait. Call them now. Local guys, they've helped over 500 families, many of them KTRS listeners to this show. Don't be too proud to save your home from either foreclosure or wasted money every month. 636-527-5121, 636-527-5121, or stlouishomeretentiongroup.com.
Quick note, got a message from Mark Harris. It says, Mark Harris in traffic. Good to know. And we got a tweet from somebody who said, McGraw schools with shop classes should be forced to buy these saws. Many schools and many trade schools and many high schools are buying these, and theater classes and theater production places are buying the saw for that very reason.
Yeah, and if it's
everybody's buying it.
And if it's great technology, yes, there are people that will buy it at $2,500, just like they did with the LCD TVs when they were plasma TVs. When they were $10,000, rich people bought them, and now they're like $200. So if people care about this, buy it, bring the price down. The market will take care of it.
952 KTRS.